Hello. Hello.
Thursday night. Still wet, still cold, still Yorkshire.
Welcome to Grim Britain. And what about that grim up north cliche? You making it sound true, Charles. But I've got a
Well,
quick interruption, if I
yes,
may.
interrupt away.
Uh, After a conversation with the Guardian's Dave Simpson about
Yes.
the peril facing small to medium live music venues, I just read data today, which came from music tech company A2D2,
Hmm.
showing that compared to 5 years ago, which isn't that long ago, the average ticket price to go to a UK festival, music festival that is,
Yeah.
has risen by 40% in 5 years.
Hmm.
40%.
Hmm. And
Now
that's
that's fine,
festival
but
tickets. I think if you were to look as well at tickets for the bigger concerts, the big arena shows now, I would think that probably would be matched, that same increase.
yeah, but that's all part of a trend in the arts world and the
Yeah.
economy as a whole, where the
Yeah.
small people are
Yeah.
being squeezed out, and the big people who put on big events, who put on luxury events, who put on high-end events, who put
Mm.
on special occasions that people are happy to pay for,
Mm.
they can afford to put their prices up and keep their customers. But smaller venues, smaller bands, smaller cafes, smaller businesses
Can't do
are
that.
being squeezed most by costs. If they put their prices up by say 40%, they will lose business and then they will definitely go
Yeah.
bust. So it
Mm.
just shows that everything's going the wrong direction. It's all going top down again.
Yeah, I mean that applies with theatre tickets as well, particularly for London, where they are becoming absolutely ludicrously high priced for tickets. I mean, we know that certain of the grand festivals have always been expensive, just like going to Cheltenham Racecourse. Interestingly, at Cheltenham Racecourse, Graham, I mean, sorry to detour into horse racing, their attendances for the Gold Cup Festival were down, and I think
Were
that
they? Wow.
is very telling because I
Mm.
think people are starting to think I'm not sure I'm getting value for
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
that's a really
Should they
because obviously
perhaps?
the
Yeah.
price
Should
of
they
staying
rename
in
it?
any
Should should
hotels.
should, should they rename it the Bronze Cup rather than the Gold Cup?
Well, I think that's the one thing that will remain high quality. Of course, is the standard of the brilliant racing provided by predominantly by the wonderful Irish trainers. But that is a real sign, I think, that people are just now starting to think, do you know what? I'm not going to go for all the days of the festival. This is it's
Mm.
becoming crazily priced. The meals to pay for at the festival, the tickets to go to the festival, the
I
parking,
agree.
staying in the hotels. I do think there does have to come a point where people just say this has got beyond ridiculous. The same applies for going to the Test match cricket. You name it. The prices of
Yeah.
so many
Well,
things now have
look,
gone up
it's
and up.
affected me. It's affected me already because,
Mm.
for example, when Bruce Springsteen announced tour dates, I checked prices and I thought I'm
Yeah.
not going to that. And then when Nick Cave and the band said they were touring later in the year and would come to Leeds first
Come to
direct to India,
Leeds. Yeah.
the first question I asked was how much does it cost? And when I saw it didn't cost too much if you didn't get the top level tickets, I thought
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to go. But if it had been like £200, just forget it.
How much are you paying, Graham?
I can't remember. It's nothing more than it's 60 quid or less, possibly
Yeah.
less, which I'm happy to
Yeah.
pay for Nick Cave and the Banshees because
I'm, I'm I'm still hoping
I've
on
seen
trying to
Nick
get
Cave live. I've
mm,
seen Nick Cave live more times than any other band apart from Jesus and Mary Chain
yeah, yeah.
in Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that maybe to get a press ticket for it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But
Mm-hmm.
now you've mentioned Jesus and Mary Chain, and the Jesus and Mary Chain have been, I think, a life. Well, almost it feels like a lifelong passion for both of us, really. And one in which the emotions towards the band have kind of ebbed and flowed, rather like the relationship between the two brothers and the Reed brothers and Reed the Riot Act at one point with
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
famous bust up on stage in America, of course, and from which at one point one may have thought no coming back. But of course, subsequent to
Mm.
that, we've had two albums now, Damage and Joy, and now new album number two, Glasgow Eyes. And I think I'm going to go sort of blind on this as to how you feel about it. I think let's just throw it open as for a discussion point. I was somewhat nervous about how this album could be, but then when the first single came out, JAMCOD or Jam Cod or JAMCOD, whichever
OD.
way you want to look at
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I thought actually that is quite intriguing and is maybe a sign of what's to come on an album. But I'm going to let you flow away first of all, Graham, and then chip in.
Yeah, well, being from East Kilbride, which isn't that far from Grangemouth, my hometown
Mm.
back in Scotland, I always had a soft spot. And what made it so great was there were two gawky East Kilbride brothers
Yeah.
who somehow, from '83 when they were formed, and although it's the 40th anniversary of Jesus Mary Chain this year, they actually formed in 1983, which make it only the 39th anniversary. Actually, it makes it the 41st, makes it the 41st
41st.
anniversary. So they're slightly late, but that's all right. We'll forgive them. But they were amazing on stage when we first saw them. I mean, I saw them with
Yeah.
Bobby Gillespie on snare drum
Yeah.
at the very beginning,
That's right.
before Psycho Candy was a hit. And they were really basic and primitive and raw and
When
dressed
gigs
all
could
in
last
black.
20 minutes.
Yeah, that's what they did. They did a 20-minute gig, then they were off. And so it was amazing. Then when we saw them together in Leeds many times over the
Yeah.
years, they were so great. They had films by Kenneth Anger behind them, Scorpio
Mm.
Rising. They were dressed in
Mm.
black leather. They were moody as hell. And although I could spot the fact that they were very quiet on stage and very moody, it was partly because they were from East Kilbride
Yeah.
and nobody talks in East Kilbride. So you couldn't expect madness on stage. They were
No,
going to
no.
be moody, but they were so good at it. They were so atmospheric. And you and me saw so many great gigs, one of the greatest bands
Mm.
ever. And when I interviewed Jim Reed, who was quite depressed when I interviewed him, they were so
Yes.
miserable on stage and they weren't wearing black and they weren't really trying. And I thought, oh, they're going to split up. And sure
Mm.
enough, they did split up the year later. And then they came back and did the Psycho Candy Union tour, which I thought
Yeah.
was a bit average. And I know you think it was good. And then released
I,
Damage and
I enjoyed
Joy.
it more than you did. I do recall that, but
Mm,
maybe nostalgia was coursing through my veins on that one. And
mm.
but I know
But the
you
bizarre
never
thing,
felt quite
yeah,
connected with that, and
yeah.
that maybe some of the magic between the fact that the musicians that were with them maybe you didn't feel were as were of a standard,
It
etc.
wasn't that.
But
There was no body language between Jim and William. They weren't
that's
brothers
true.
anymore.
That's
They
true.
weren't dressed
Yeah.
in black. There was no Scorpio rising. There was
No.
no atmosphere. There was no majesty. There was no
Mm.
dark majesty. And that's
No.
partly because by then, William Reed was living in America, in
Yeah.
LA, although he's
Yeah.
moved to Arizona since then. And
Mm.
Jim Reed was living in Dorset.
Yeah.
So they turned into real Rolling Stones rock stars by living
Yeah.
continents apart. And there was continents apart between the two of them on stage, I
Yes.
felt.
But
And
yeah,
Damage and Joy, which came out
yeah.
yeah, Damage and Joy came out in 2017, and I thought it was strictly average. It was
Mm.
easily the worst Jesus Mary Chain album by quite a
Mm.
distance. I only
Mm.
liked one track, All Things Past, and the rest, who really cared?
All
So I
things,
didn't think
all other things passed you by. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't think Glasgow Eyes was going to be much cop. I was quite worried about it in advance.
Mm.
But I don't know what you think, Charles. But lo and behold, it's definitely a return to form.
I would absolutely agree. By no means is it on a level with either Psycho Candy um,
Darklands.
or yeah, absolutely, or Darklands. But what I like about it is that they first of all they've actually it does seem to me there's a proper connection between the two of them working together again. This is, I mean, I think that was not the case with Damage and Joy. I think it's done under duress. This looks to me like a reflowering between them, and
Hmm.
not and not predictable either. In that what they've gone with, they're actually structuring songs much more around keyboards than guitars this time, which is something that's unexpected on one level. But actually, if you're looking at being more futuristic in the way they make the music, then to look at krautrock influences obviously strongly there, rather than the familiar influences of Mark Bolan and the great American guitar bands
And Bo Diddley
and Bo Diddley.
and Velvet
So
Underground.
we're familiar with both the kind of bubblegum, beautiful bubblegum pop that they could knock out, but equally with huge guitars in Bo Diddley style. So here they've gone for something that's, I think, initially unexpected, but actually suits them. The darkness is still there, which I think is really, really important. And the darkness, and there are certain songs that are a little more than dirges. A song like, the title, Pure
Pure Poor.
Poor, you can't get a more dirge-like title than Pure Paul.
Yeah, yeah. It makes the Stooges No Fun look very much like fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's also a self-awareness that's there. I mean, I
The
think
lyrics are quite personal, Charles. I was quite surprised by how personal,
yeah.
nostalgic the lyrics are. The lyrics are mainly about themselves and about the history of the band, which I've never seen them do
So
before.
Chemical Animal is a real case in point with that, isn't it?
Mm-mm. And also the Eagles and the Beatles. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a classic
Mm.
Jeez Mary Chain song I've ever heard one. Although the riff is sort of ripped off "I Love Rock and Roll"
I
by
love
Joan
rock and
Jett.
roll. Yeah, the Joan Jett,
but
the
they,
Joan Jett cover. Yeah,
they were
yeah,
never averse to ripping off classic riffs and then doing something new with them. So I mean, that's a
yeah,
classic Jeez Mary Chain track. But the best tracks to me are the ones that purr rather than growl. So
yes,
Mediterranean X Film, Discotheque, Silver Strings. These are all tracks that are like
yeah,
the Cure had been allowed to produce Jeez Mary Chain, but in a sort of very quiet, purring Cure way. And they sort of grow on you rather than like bite your bottom, like a lot of
mm,
the classic Jeez Mary Chain tracks used to do.
mm,
And
mm.
it shows us some sort of artistic future in the band.
Yes. I'd agree with that. I like the little name check they even give to themselves. They even sing
Mm,
Jesus and Mary Chain at one point,
yeah.
and not in the way that rappers like to tell you every 5 minutes who they are. No, it's not done in that style.
Well, yeah, I can't
It's
imagine. I
it's
can't
just
imagine
suddenly
Jay Z
gently
Chain
thrown in
rapping.
their name, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I can't imagine Jay Z appearing on a Jesus Mary Chain album.
Definitely not. Are there flaws to it as well, Graham? I mean, it's not.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, the, all great bands are eventually start recycling riffs over and over again. I
Yes.
mean, the Rolling Stones reached that point about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
In Jesus Mary Chain, I mean, especially in the second side, there's tracks where the main riffs are like ones they've used many times before, although
Mm,
they're used reasonably well. And
mm,
so I'm not saying this is a return to, like you said, it's not a return to like their early years majesty. I
mm.
would say it's basically a return to the form of their last album before they split up, Monkey, because
Monkey.
Monkey
Yes.
wasn't a greatly loved album, but it
No.
had good tracks and it did attempt to move the dial a little bit away from their 1980s sound. And this also tries the same trick. It tries to, without leaving the 80s behind entirely or their classic sound, it moves it
Mm,
forward a bit. But the tracks I love, like Mediterranean X Film, they're not as
mm.
good as Just Like Honey
No.
or Happy
No.
When It Rains or Sidewalking or Kill Surf City or
No.
even Reverence on Honey's Dead.
Or
They're
Blues for a
just
Gun.
good. They're just good tracks. But I
Mm.
suppose for a band that's in its 40th year or 41st year, just to do good tracks is some sort of achievement.
I read one review that took the line "I love rock and roll, I hate rock and roll," which of course they had the
Mm.
two songs to that effect, and saying that here's a band that probably had gone through a phase of hating rock and roll as much as they were hating each other, but
Yeah.
maybe have rediscovered a love of rock and roll. I know it's a bit contrived, that imagery, but it's there in their own song, so one might as well acknowledge that it seems to me there is a falling back in love with rock and roll to some extent, and of course with nods to other music, be it Velvet Underground, be it Krautrock, and yet still distinctively Jesus and Mary Chain. I think that's what I would want from them anyway. That they've always done that. It's always been they've always acknowledged the cornerstones of the very best building of songs. And I think there's sufficient constructions of their own going on that this is a much more rewarding album than Damage and Joy. Good title as Damage and Joy was. The rest of the
Mm.
album didn't live up to the title.
That's true, and there's a sort of purpose to the album. It sounds like there's a
Mhm.
reason to do the album, whereas Damage
Mhm.
and Joy sound like we've got to do an album because
Yeah.
we've sort of reformed, so
Mhm.
we'll go through the motions of doing it. And it sounded like a rather than a work of art, it sounded like a work of work. Whereas this one sounds a bit more like a living band that's got something to say.
They've been touring it already, of course, and I was interested to read that Jane Weaver has been touring with them and singing the Hope
Huh?
Sonderville part, for example. And I mean that again. I mean, choosing an artist like Jane Weaver to work with, I think that's
That's
typical of them.
interesting.
I mean, that's typical of them having really good taste in who they get to perform with them. Of course, Shane MacGowan famously performed with them, and well, it was quite indistinguishable as to who was singing, whether it was Shane or whether it was Jim on that particular track. Um,
Well, they
so
both sounded a bit world weary, that's for
they,
sure.
they certainly did. They certainly did. So, what do you read into a title, Venal Joy? Do you think that superbly sums them up?
it's a good combination of two words, whether it means anything at all. It's got that smack of rock and roll, and
Exactly.
rock and roll is about conjuring up imagery. And
Yeah.
venal joys are great. It's great two words.
I thought Girl 71 again. Perfect combination of words.
Mm-hmm. But I quite like American Born. That's quite a strong song, the second track.
Yeah.
Bit bit grungy, but it's got a strength to it.
I think your point about, I mean, and it's always this thing, maybe you would expect the more one listens to an album, the more that you'll be rewarded for listening and that it will seep in. But I think in the case of Damage and Joy, and maybe, further back as well, the more you played the songs, the less you got into them. I think the reverse with this album. I think this is one that does reward the greater exploration of it, and I think the songs quietly revealing the diamonds within something that's rather more murky.
Well, you know that Jesus Mary do love the Rolling Stones and have been influenced by them over the years, but
Yeah.
say with full confidence that the Jesus Mary new album is as good as the Rolling Stones' last album last year.
Yeah.
And there's
in
not
this
many
song
times you can say that a band's as good as the Rolling Stones, and they finally met the standard of the legends they sort of aspired to be.
In the lyrics for the song which references the Rolling Stones, it's interesting they've decided that both Bill and Charlie have left the party. Now, I thought Bill Wyman was still alive, so I'm trying to or are they just suggesting they're not great party animals, Charlie and Bill? What did you read into that?
Well, it's either that yeah, they're in suggesting they're not great party animals. That's possible, or it could just be the lyric writer's usual falling back on anything that works. Because when you're constructing the song and trying to make it rhyme and trying to keep to the sense of the song, sometimes you have no option but to go for some sort of line that either is slightly cheesy or doesn't actually quite make sense because it's the only thing that'll scan.
It might well be both of those. I mean, I can't imagine. Well, maybe Bill Wyman still goes out and is a party animal. Who knows?
Well, I believe he was a party animal in some ways, but let's not get into that.
We won't go there, Graham. No, we shall move on swiftly from that, I think. Now, what I want is your money. That's what I want. Your thoughts on Monet?
Oh, he's one of my favorite. I mean, he's one of everybody's favorite artists. But whenever I see a Monet in the flesh, and I think you're referring to the fact that the Water Lily Pond, one of his great paintings from 1889, is coming to York Art Gallery in
May the 10th.
But when you see his paintings in the flesh, not all of them, but a lot of them, especially these ones that are based on water and sea and grass and things, just basic, primal, natural things. Yeah. But when you see him in the flesh, I tend to well up and almost cry, which virtually no other artist does that to me. And I think the great thing about the best Monets is that he's not trying to copy nature or reproduce nature or paint a picture that looks like nature. He's trying to be nature himself. He's trying to produce something which goes beyond man's conscious logic. It just happens. He's trying to give the effect of this has just happened, just like a tree would happen, or a blade of grass, or a ripple on the water. And I get
so
really
painting as natural as nature.
That's right. Yeah, it's not conscious. It's below conscious level. I think that's what he tries to do, and that's what he achieves on a lot of his greatest paintings.
So that separates him from landscape artists, of which there's a plethora. At any number of regional art shows, you will find endless landscapes. For you, it's more than that.
Yeah, it goes beyond the visual. It's not spiritual. I don't detect any, attempt to like reach a spiritual level. It's like he wants to be a blade of grass, which obviously is an impossible aspiration. And it's different from other impressionists or post-impressionists. When you're looking at great paintings by Pissarro, which are gorgeous to look at, or post-impressionists like Seurat, you can see the work there. And part of the pleasure look at those paintings is the fact you can see how clever they are. You can see how they're constructed. The construction is front and center. And you're going, wow, that's an amazing construction. What a great way of thinking. But with Monet, you're not getting amazed by the construction. You're not admiring his cleverness.
No.
You're being totally drawn in to the heart of what he's done.
I think this is a very significant exhibition for the York Art Gallery. Just to give the context, it's a celebration of the bicentenary of the National Gallery. and it's a National Treasures series and 12 galleries around the country. And we're talking not just in England here, we're talking around Britain. And it's calculated that 35 million people will be within an hour's journey of one of the galleries. So York gloriously has been selected as the only one in Yorkshire, which I think is great news for the York Art Gallery.
Well, yeah, it is.
It's giving it a publicity that sometimes the York Art Gallery doesn't get, by contrast, maybe with some of the galleries in Sheffield, in particular, or the Ferens at Hull, or some of the Leeds galleries. And so this, I think, is really good news on that level. What I also like about it is that, yes, you get the chance to see this most glorious painting, but it's within context. So you will see works that were inspired by it. You'll see works so loans are coming in for that, and loans, I said, not loads. And also you will get works from the York Art Gallery's own collection. And then there is a newly commissioned piece by Michaela Yearwood-Dan, a South London artist, who it's rather simplistic to say she does floral work, and I would wish to not make it as simplistic in a description as that. But she will be doing four, I think, four large scale pieces that she's doing for York Art Gallery, and this is an artist who has gained international attention, and I think it's a canny move by the art gallery to find, in her own way, a kind of groundbreaking artist working within the field that Monet would work in as well. And so while on one level you might think, well, would it have been good to have had a local artist doing it? But actually, I think they've gone with an artist who's getting a rising international reputation. And I think there's plenty of merit in doing that.
But the strange thing about York Art Gallery is that since it was renovated and transformed into a much more impressive building, it's a great space to exhibit art.
It is.
And a great place to visit. But its reputation hasn't really grown that much in terms of its content and its exhibitions. I mean, it's certainly better than it was 20 years ago, but it hasn't really, it's not quite getting there yet, I don't feel. And like, if you're going to say what are the most important art spaces in Yorkshire, you'd say the Hepworth in Wakefield and the Yorkshire Sculpture Park,
and the Yorkshire Sculpture
which again is outside Wakefield. You wouldn't say York Art Gallery. So this sort of thing, getting a fantastic Monet, may help it push in the right direction.
I would hope so. I mean, as we've discussed before, York Art Gallery had to take the decision to reintroduce across everything charging. So previously they ran a system by which you could see the York Art Gallery's own collections for free, and you would pay for the specialist exhibitions. They reintroduced a charge of, I think, £6.50 for residents and £7.50 for visitors. And my initial reaction to that was that I thought that was dangerous in doing that, because we know that last time that happened, 66% decrease in attendance. But maybe the judgment of £7 is actually quite a sensible judgment on the price. And I've kind of been reflecting on it and thinking, as you made the point, Graham, well, what other option have they got at the moment? And that's the reality. So
that's true.
When that's the case, then what you have to do is come up with really good exhibitions, because that then makes people not even think about the fact that they're having to go in and to pay for specialist exhibitions. And so when a work like this comes to York Art Gallery and is likely to draw people from far further afield than York, because as they pointed out, within 35 million people living within 1 hour of the 12 places that have been chosen. The nearest, by the way, the two nearest ones, I think the Lang Gallery in Newcastle is one, and the Walker Gallery in Liverpool is the other. So that is considerable distances. But then let's think about it. Would I go up to the Lang Gallery to see the exhibition there? Yes, because of that. And likewise, would I go to Liverpool to the Walker Gallery? I think the answer is yes. So I hope that equally people will then make that judgment to come to York. Plus, as we know, York has so many other attractions about it that you can make it part of a visit to come to see this exhibition.
Basically, you're hoping that there's money in Monet. That's what you're hoping.
I am, for the sake of York, hoping that indeed there is money in Monet. That's what I want.
Can I just say, Charles? That I love Monet so much that having been to see the water lilies, at Musée de Lingerie in not lingerie, by the way, but lingerie in Paris.
I was going to say that didn't need qualifying what you meant.
Yeah, in Paris, that beautiful, gorgeous painting, huge, that goes around, wraps around the room, and you're in the middle of it. I would happily, if I had to die at some point, be interred in a coffin inside that museum with the water lilies. Although I'm not sure they'd appreciate that if
no, possibly not, Graham. But anyway,
it'd be a beautiful spot.
It's running from May the 10th, and I think from memory it's running until
September the 8th.
September the 8th.
Charles.
So I would urge people to crack on with booking for it, because let's make this exhibition as busy as possible, because I think it's important for York Art Gallery. I think it's it's a significant exhibition. One remembers when they had the Caravaggio exhibition there, how significant that was. One remembers when the David Hockney exhibition was held there, which was just that one magnificent painting there, and again that drew attendances. And one remembers when Whistlejack was brought there, the wonderful Stubbs horse painting, which of course the original was done at Wood. I'm going to get this name right. Wentworth Woodhouse.
I'm not really into horse paintings, not even in Degas. I know
well,
Degas
Graham,
is
right? Okay, you say that. Paintings. You say that. Go and see Whistlejacket.
Yeah, I do see that.
You might just think differently.
Okay. Well, I haven't seen it, so therefore I have absolutely no knowledge.
But, equine art has been your speciality, but I think you would actually be. I think it's a stunning work. I think Stubbs would be insulted if he was still alive today to think you couldn't rate even that piece of equine art.
Well, the thing is, you and myself went to the Grand National Aintree a long time ago.
Yeah.
And in those days, you got to walk around the track before the race, spectators just walk around the whole course.
Yeah.
And I actually preferred the walk around the course before the race to watching the race itself.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, but the horse flesh, Graham. I mean, you're not drawn to it at all.
Yeah. No, I know some people almost worship horses. I'm not that interested really. I prefer cats, and I don't mean the musical.
Well, I'm probably despite my family's involvement in horse racing at Ripon, I kind of am more into cats myself as well. But I do think when you see a racehorse on the move across across the green glades, it is a spectacular sight, Graham. I think you slightly undervalue it. I think you slightly undervalue it.
That was almost poetic. That was almost poetic, Charles. I'm impressed.
It was closer to pathetic than poetic, but we gave it a go. Now, Graham, I'm just looking at the opportunity I feel for another interruption at this point.
It could be a final one, but I'm off to a gig in Leeds tomorrow night to see William Doyle, that acolyte of Brian Eno.
You mentioned. Now, where are you seeing William Doyle? Is he Brunel?
Well, no, I'm seeing him at the Hyde Park Book Club, which it turns out is quite hard to get to by public transport, but it's actually located in a former petrol station. And it featured in The Guardian online earlier this week as being one of the best independent places in Leeds. So I've picked the right place to go there tomorrow night.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to your reaction to that. Now, I want to discuss a show that I went to. I had to pay for it, which is very rare. There were no press tickets.
What a disgrace.
Well, pull a fast one. It was an evening with the Fast show. And what this show was, 30 years after they formed. So obviously, Caroline Aherne, God bless her, was not there for obvious reasons. But the other 6 were all there. And it was a combination of nostalgia and chat, familiar characters and caricatures and catchphrases, and a chance to sell lots of T-shirts to that effect, and to bask in the joy of those who love the show, and indeed previous live performances.
And was it good, Charles? Because I'm conscious time is running out on this episode of the podcast. So was it good?
How long have we got left, Graham?
Oh yeah, you actually might be right.
I've got a bit of time left. It's not yet. I don't think it's yet come up. I don't think alarm bells are ringing. I know the show is called The Fast Show. You need to be a bit faster talking about it than I am at the moment. Let's put it this way, Graham.
Yeah.
There's always another sketch coming along, rather like a Chinese meal. There's always another sketch coming along. And it had kind of 2 different paces to the show. So on the one hand, it was reflective, so they chat to each other. Led by Paul Whitehouse and Charlie Higson, who sort of conducted the interviews of the others. And then on would come Mark Williams, on would come Arabella Weir, on would come Simon Day, and on would come John Thompson, who I most enjoyed John Thompson and his contributions. And I
He's
enjoyed
very good,
Simon
John
Day for
Thompson.
being and his hands have gone up, Graham. 10 minutes, so it's still 10 minutes that was sacred. Good.
Wow.
So well, you know, would I have paid to go if I didn't think actually it was worth reviewing, and therefore I was curious to see it. But I kind of do feel that when watching sketches, they are by nature sketchy.
That's true.
And I accept that they're supposed to be past, but I think they've moved very fast and then to the next one. I think that suits television rather more than being on stage. And I have read subsequent reviews that have liked it, perhaps a kind of 5-star and 4-star level. I kept feeling, right, I'm just getting into these two characters being back with us again. And I know that goes, in other words, I wanted it to be a slightly less fast show, but I guess also I much preferred some characters to others. The thing is, I dare say that amongst any audience that's there, there'll be people who have different favourites, apart from I think everyone loves Ralph and Ted. But I kind of wanted the favourites to come back more often, as it were.
I get it. So but the thing is, first of all, it's not the slow show, it is the fast show.
It is.
And secondly, faster is safer, Charles, because as you said, like the sketches just went from one sketch to the other. That meant if you didn't like that sketch, there was another one coming along quite quickly, which you may like better. So it was a safer way of doing it. But I agree. I don't really want lots of bitterness when it comes to comedy on stage. I want to get into the comedian and enjoy how funny that person or person's plural is.
Now, with that in mind, I therefore enjoyed perhaps more than the sketches, which each time a catchphrase came up, there was the massive cheer of recognition, and which is all rather glad handing and so I didn't really get into that. I was more interested, obviously, to hear the stories behind the characters, to hear the stories behind the sketches. And there was a lovely tribute to Caroline Aherne, which was just a series of the videos of her doing the show, but also reflecting on her contribution. And I enjoyed that side rather more. But then that's what I think. That's why it's significant
that's a bit
to do
personal,
the show.
Charles, as well. That's more personal, so it means more. There's more emotion there.
And you see, and absolutely, but and I actually think it is interesting as well to see the real people's characters come through rather than the caricatures that they play. And I particularly enjoyed John Thompson, who can do any number of voices, a marvelous impressionist, and the unpredictability.
He's a really talented guy, is John Thompson.
Oh, absolutely. And the unpredictability of Simon Day, who didn't know what he was going to do, what he was going to say next. And I liked that about it. I tend not to like things which are just planned, prepared, and move on. I like it when there's a bit of unpredictability about what will be said next. So that side of the show I really enjoyed. Now, however, I'm rather expecting more to enjoy Drop the Dead Donkey, The Reawakening. Do you know about this show?
What live on stage?
Live on stage at Leeds Grand from April the 9th to 13th. It's Graham. It's going to be an entirely fresh play.
Wait a minute, without any original cast members from the TV series?
So you've got all the original cast, bar Hayden Gwynn, obviously, alas, God bless her. So all the other original cast members will be there doing a completely original piece.
Yeah, but they're all older, Charles. The thing about comedy is that age is important in comedy. You can tolerate an old band coming back after years looking old and playing old songs, much more than old comedians coming back and telling old jokes. There's something that is more less likable about an old comedian than an old musician.
They won't be telling old jokes. I mean, in defense of the Fast Show, they did freshen up and so the characters were familiar, but they would come up with new sketches within that, albeit rather briefer than that. This show, I think, will be more interesting because Drop the Dead Donkey, The Reawakening, will be an entirely fresh show. It will be looking at the state of newsrooms in 2024. And you and I
think if it's treated more like if it's treated more like a play, which happens to be funny in places, than just a strict comedy, it might work.
That's why I'm really looking forward to it.
It has to be accurate.
Well, I mean, Drop the Dead Donkey was accurate before. It was accurate before.
At the time,
that's one of the things I liked about it. So I've got really good vibes about it because for me, I think it's more interesting than just having a chat with the Fast Show about do you remember this, do you remember that. This is again unexpected. And I know that Ian Syme at the Grand Opera House, I was chatting to him about the other day, is really, really pleased that this show's coming to Leeds. And I think if you're going to get the band together, the equivalent of that, then to actually do something that's new and new stimulations behind it, absolutely valid in doing that. Rick Mail, of course, another, God bless him, the late Rick, came to York in an update of, I'm never remembering it. What was his, the politician one, was it called? The one about the statesman, what was it called?
Alan Bastard. Alan Bastard, New Statesman.
Yes, Alan Bastard, the New Statesman. So Rick reactivated Alan Bastard, the New Statesman, for a tour. Now, it was, well, he has such huge personality on stage, and he thrives on being anarchic and unpredictable. So yes, there was a script, but equally there was Alan Bastard doing his own thing within that. I thought it was worth. I thought again,
it was funny as him anyway.
Why again it was interesting was, how did Alan Bastard fit into the new world of politics that in some ways he prefigured? So he suddenly was bringing it forward to when it was now set with contemporary politics. And I thought it absolutely had value for that, because it looked at how would Alan Bastard fit into the new political environment that existed. And I feel that Drop the Dead Donkey, The Reawakening, is going to do the same kind of thing of seeing how a newsroom would function now in the world of 24-hour rolling news.
Yeah, well, I think potentially it will work, but the need to know what they're talking about. I hope they've done the research well.
Well, I'm going to be confident on this. I might be talking off the top of my head or some other part of my anatomy, but I just feel that actually to do this at all, I don't see the point of coming back without some raison d'etre behind it. And we know, because we've talked about the state of newsrooms as journalists of long standing many a times on this podcast, and it is something. It's a changed world, and actually one that I think has sort of changed almost helter-skelter beyond control. But for those who try to work within it, keep the hamster wheel goes round. But actually now, these days, you fall off the hamster wheel, and you don't have any option but to do that. You're often booted off.
The hamster wheel has got. The hamster wheel has got faster and faster. Has now left its hinges and is just cavorting across the room at top speed.
Exactly, and that's what's got to be. That's the kind of thing that. That's what I think this show would have to show. The irony is you're trying to fill 24 hours of news, which actually is unbelievably repetitive, but at the same time you're having to work faster and faster and faster to do that.
Well, as I said yesterday to I think she was 20 years old, the student who was doing journalism at university was interviewing me, filming me for a 8-minute film she was making about how journalism's changed over the last 40 years. When I was chatting to her, it made me feel about 200 years old.
Why, Graham? You're still doing it. You are still doing it.
Yeah, no, but because I remember how it used to be done, there's a constant nagging pull back to the past. That's the problem. Whereas if I was joining newspapers now as a 20-year-old, because I didn't know the past, I'd probably think it was perfectly fine.
You would? Really?
Well, maybe not perfectly fine, because I've always been a critic. So, I would have been a critic.
Remote working, chasing hits, which used to be, the prerogative of drug addicts.
It's gone beyond that. I mean, everything's breaking news now. What's happening now is that there's more news than ever. People aren't having to find news. News is pouring out of every orifice.
Except that, Graham, the world now thinks that a new shop opening is news.
Well, that's true. Everything's become news.
That used to be advertorials. That used to be advertorials. Now
you're
it's
entirely
news.
correct there, Charles. You're right. News has broadened into being anything that anybody's interested in. It's unbelievable.
Births, deaths, and marriages, not enough. Hatches, smashes. Was it hatches, batches? No. What is it? Hatches, batches, and dispatches. We're about to dispatch ourselves off. We're into the last minute. Graham, good evening, and thank you for a marvelous night. And I'm off to join Bill and Charlie going home.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.